Thousands of low-income renters across the country are facing eviction or higher rent as government subsidies come to an end. The federally funded National Rental Affordability Scheme allows tenants to pay around 20% below the market rate, but the program is winding down. Rebecca Oelkers is the Chief Executive of the Brisbane Housing Company, a social housing provider, and she joins me now. Rebecca Oelkers, thank you so much for your time. Can you just explain why this scheme is being wound back?
It's being wound back because the federal government had it as a 10-year scheme, and that 10-year scheme is coming to an end. So the 10 years is finishing and there isn't any replacement at the moment.
So 30% of the homes exiting the scheme this year are in Queensland. Is the problem particularly acute where you are?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Queensland is probably the most affected. We have 10,000 units that are going to come off by 2026. And it's very difficult because people are going to need to find new accommodation when NRAS expires. And particularly in a market like this, landlords are going to be looking to get the rent increases when NRAS does expire. So there is no steady supply of affordable housing. And with wages stagnant and unemployment unstable, more people are going to be pushed onto the public housing wait lists. And currently in Queensland, there's probably around 47,000 on those lists already, and that's only going to increase.
Wow, 47,000. Just tell us a little bit more about the National Rental Affordability Scheme and how it works.
So essentially, I mean, it's been a very, very good scheme. Essentially, providers will build accommodation and they will rent it out to low-income households. So they might be key workers, for instance, nurses, bus drivers, teachers. They rent it out at 80% of market rent. And what they get is a subsidy from both the federal government and the state government to top that up to a market rent. So the landlord, who is usually a mum or dad investor, then gets the market rent, but they're actually targeting people who really need affordable accommodation in that accommodation. So it's been, in our opinion, a very, very successful, excellent scheme because it has well targeted people who really need it.
There have been some criticisms of the scheme, and I'll come to that in a moment, but the scheme was axed in 2014 and, as you say, in 5 years' time, by mid-2026, there will be no homes left in the program. So what exactly will that mean for the vulnerable people who rent these homes?
Oh, look, it's going to be absolutely dire for those people who are renting them currently. They don't know what they're going to do, and they're faced with a situation where they have had this home for 10 years. They've been very happy, they've been very stable, and they're going to be thrown out of those homes. There's not a solution, and we don't have any kind of way to turn that over. So, you know, with organisations such as BHC, where we have actually built the accommodation ourselves, we will continue to keep that as affordable. But where you've had investors, mum and dad investors purchase in, they're going to want to increase those rents to market rents once they don't get the subsidy anymore. So people are going to be out of homes. And really, as I said before, they're going to end up back on public housing wait lists.
Yeah, of course, for the mum and dad investors, they will be looking to make a return. How will BHC be able to maintain the current rent amounts?
Well, BHC is a public benevolent institution, and that's our mission and that's our raison d'etre. So we will continue to do that regardless, but it will come out of revenues that we have, and it'll be at the expense of other affordable accommodation that we may have been able to provide. So it's really just an equation. As I said before, there's so many people on the public housing wait lists, so many people who are in dire need of affordable accommodation. So taking subsidies away when it is so well targeted is just craziness in my mind.
Because we're talking about, when we say vulnerable people, women and children fleeing domestic violence situations, they're the sort of people that are getting help through this scheme.
Absolutely, Karina. There's so many different groups. As I said before, there's key workers, there's women and families escaping domestic violence, there's people who are on low incomes who have very complex needs. There's a whole raft of different people who've been able to access this scheme, and it has been phenomenally successful in our opinion. Very, very well targeted. I know there's been criticisms of the scheme, but no scheme is perfect. And certainly to our mind, when community housing organisations have been involved in the provision, it's been very well targeted, and people who have needed it have really received good accommodation and stable accommodation.
So the Federal Housing Minister says that 2 external reviews have found flaws in the National Rental Affordability Scheme, that it was slow and failed to meet delivery targets as well as being expensive. What's your response to that?
Like I said before, I don't think any scheme is perfect. I think this scheme has actually phenomenally well addressed the issues that we have had with regard to affordable housing. In our eyes, it's been a success. I think that the notions about it being rorted or it's been slow to market, it's always difficult to get a scheme up and going. And in actual fact, it's going extremely well. We should keep it going. The subsidies should remain, in my opinion. And it's a scheme that needs bipartisan support. And I fear that because it doesn't have that support, it's really been a casualty.
Rebecca Oelkers, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us.
You're welcome.